Okay, thank you for that, everybody. So once again, thanks for joining Hannah and myself. It's great to have so many people on board and seeing the numbers kind of tripping up every second. It's great. So thanks for all your support. Now, those of you who were on board with this last week, you kind of know the drill, but just to those who are new to this, Hannah and I have had this kind of system working last week where we get a whole bunch of questions because we know that there's going to be a whole lot of people looking for a new job, both now and in the weeks and months to come. So we thought it would be a really good idea to to open up the forum to give you guys an opportunity to ask some questions about recruitment and hopefully give you some pointers as to how you can kind of separate yourself from the crowd and any other bits and pieces that you want to ask. So we've got some questions that have come through, but if you have got some kind of here and now whilst we're chatting away, please feel free to kind of put the questions in the chat box, and we can always come back to them at the end and answer as many of those as possible. We try to keep our webinars for around the half an hour mark because we don't want people to get bored of what we're saying, but we'll kind of see how many questions come up. A quick introduction to who Hannah and I are. We both represent Strictly Recruitment, and I'm COO for Strictly, and Hannah is one of our senior consultants. As Strictly Recruitment, we've been around for 10 years now, and we've got strong links to the business support community. So that's executive assistant, PA, facilities, HR, marketing, admin, those kind of things. So as I say, fingers crossed, we'll be able to provide some kind of good value to you guys and answer some of the questions that have come through. We've had quite a few. Now, what we want to do is we want to kick off with a question that we actually had last week, but the lady wasn't able to log in. So we're going to start with that, and then we'll kind of kick off from there. So apologies if you've heard it already, but it's a good question. So I think it will be good to kind of recap that for those that didn't hear it last week, basically.
Okay, let me just find this question. Here we go. So the question was, companies that have had to make cutbacks as a result of the pandemic, once we have the all clear, will they start recruiting straight away, or do you think they will wait months? Being back office staff, and as we don't bring any revenue in, will we be left behind? And then the second part of the question was, do we continue applying for roles advertised on job boards, or should we wait until we have a firm date as to when the isolation curfew is to be lifted?
Good stuff. So my thoughts behind that is, sadly, there's not an exact answer for the first part of the question, in the sense of will guys get left behind, and will we, in terms of in the time frames and what have you. What we can say is that we are in contact with multiple businesses and multiple clients on a daily basis, and although the recruitment market has dried up for now, every single business that we spoke to have reiterated to us that roles are basically on hold for the moment, and not one client or business has said to us, well, we're not going to be recruiting in the foreseeable future. Now, my personal opinion is that if we can get back to work quicker than quickly, I think that it will give us a chance to kind of get back to kind of recruitment pretty quickly. And what we are seeing at the moment is that a number of clients have got in contact with us in this past week and asked us for advice on how to host interviews virtually. So that to me is a really good sign that businesses want to kind of get things kick-started and what have you. To answer the second part of the question about applying for jobs, definitely now is the time to be applying for jobs, 100%, because what you'll probably have seen is a lot of recruitment agencies have just completely disappeared. and more for them, because they need to be in the best position to be ready to go for the clients when we do get back to it. And the same with the applicants as well. There's going to be a whole raft of applications coming in when we do go back to some sense of normality. So as a job seeker, you need to be at the front of the queue, essentially, when that point does actually happen. So definitely be applying for jobs now, but also be wary to make sure that the jobs that you're actually applying for are real and bona fide jobs, essentially. Hannah, do you have anything to add to that? Is that what we spoke? Is that what we covered last week, or is there anything?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly what we covered last week. I think it is just important to remain proactive, well, as proactive as possible. Like Paul said, a lot of the jobs that you will see, unfortunately, may not be real that are advertised, just so that agencies can keep their candidates coming through. But going directly to agencies and applying directly to jobs that are coming directly from companies as well is something that you need to be doing.
100%. Now is a great time to be building the network and putting the foundations in place so you are ready to go. As I say, I think that the important thing is to be the important thing is to be first in the queue, because there are going to be lots of people looking for a job and applying for jobs very, very soon. Okay, so on to the questions that have come through. So this is a three-part question, so we'll answer it one at a time. Are employers recruiting at the moment? What do you think, Hannah?
Yes, they are. I mean, all you've got to do is look on Indeed and other job board websites, and you will see jobs still coming through. Of course, a lot lighter on the office support side. I suppose when it comes to the professional industry, we've not seen heaps. The public sector, of course, are recruiting heavily at the moment, but there's very few companies that have gone completely on freeze in terms of recruitment. There are still what they call business critical roles that are still being recruited, but in terms of office support, yeah, it is a lot lighter.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with Hannah there. It has things have died down, but there are some employers still recruiting at this moment in time. And of the interviews that are taking place at the moment, how are these interviews being conducted?
Everything's via video call at the moment. We've got the odd interviews going on currently, unfortunately not for PA, EA roles, more for the finance and HR side of things, but everything's being done via video call. Obviously it's taking a bit longer because rather than having a panel of 3 people as normal interviewing one person, they're having to do separate interviews. So I've got a friend, for example, who's interviewing with a social media channel, and she's got, I think, 4 interviews in a row of 45 minutes each. So, you know, people are doing the best that they can. It's not happening as quick as we'd all like it to be happening, but it is still happening, which is the good thing.
Yeah, I think with I think what's interesting to know is the conversations that have taken place this week from a number of businesses who have all been in touch and asked us to give them some advice. And one client in particular has asked to put together a kind of hints and tips guide that they can refer to for virtual interviewing and video interviewing and what have you. I think I kind of expanding on that question slightly more. You know, look, none of us know what's around the corner with lifting restrictions and how we're going to go back to work and what have you. But it is quite, it stands to reason. Logic dictates that, you know, we're not just going to all go back to work, you know, and everyone's going to be on the tube next Monday. You know, it's not going to happen. Most likely, it's probably going to be a phased return to work. So I think probably what we will start to see is when roles do come in, a lot more organisations will be using the video technology and what have you, moving forward, certainly in the next 6 months with those business critical roles as well. So I think that's something, this is just an opinion, but I think that that's something that will be kind of more prevalent over the kind of coming months to come. The next part of the question is, what is the general consensus of starting a new role under the current restrictions? It would be good to kind of get a little bit more wider information about that. I don't know whether she means the onboarding process. Perhaps should we talk about what people are doing on the onboarding process, Hannah, or do you think that she's talking about whether it's a little bit risky starting a role at the moment?
I mean, if you're going to be starting a new role, you're going to be working from home. You're not going to be going into the office. In terms of onboarding, people are still onboarding new starters. From the companies that I've spoken to, it's not taking them any longer to get people onboarded either, because, you know, onboarding companies are still working from home as well and doing checks and so on. Is it risky? The only issue you've got is obviously in regards to the whole furlough thing. We're now past the day of, if you do start a new role and then they decide within a few weeks' time that actually they don't need this person anymore, you're not going to be covered for the furlough payments. But, you know, that's the risk you've got to take. And at the end of the day, you'd rather have a job, even if it is just for the month and then you have to leave and then come back, than have nothing at all. So I wouldn't be hesitant to going ahead with anything.
Yeah, I think, you know, from a business owner's perspective, if a business is saying they want somebody to start at this moment in time, they would have done their due diligence. They would, you know, they're not, you know, that people aren't stupid. They're not gonna commit to somebody and say, "Hey, come and start. We'll onboard you and we'll do all of this," if it wasn't something that they had done their homework in. So if somebody's getting a job offer now and the company is committing to them, I would grab it with both hands, because that business should and would have done all of their research and due diligence, and that job will be, you know, you would like to think it will be as secure as possible given the current climate of where we are at this moment in time. Okay, so the next one is, so this individual has been a contractor and finished up at the tail end of last year. Basically, can we give any tips on how we can manage the uncertainty of knowing actually when banking, finance, banks and all these other organisations will start recruiting and onboarding new hires along with our aspirations and natural career progression? So it's quite a broad question there, but kind of a tips and assurances of what job seekers can be doing in this downturn, I think is a good way of summarising it.
Yeah, I think as the first question we had, you still need to be proactive. I think obviously keep in mind that there is a lot of candidates out there now. It's definitely not what we call a candidate short market, because lots of people have been, you know, made redundant, let go, and so on. So there naturally is going to be a lot of competition. So it's important to really put yourself out there and just really be ahead of the game. Managing the uncertainty of knowing when everyone's going to start recruiting, I don't think anyone can predict or know that. You know, with everything that's going on, the numbers are slowly dropping, so we would hope to see that things do start getting back to normal within the next month or so, but you know, we can't predict that, unfortunately. I think it's just important to get yourself in the right position, really be proactive. That's all you can do, really.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I totally agree with everything that Hannah has just said there. Ultimately, whilst this point is kind of happening, if an individual is out of work and if an individual is not on, you know, is not on furlough, well, even if you are on furlough, to be fair, I think this is the most perfect opportunity that we will ever be given to learn as many new skills and develop ourselves so we are ready to be the best employee we can possibly be. Now, I know that a lot of people that's on this call at this moment have seen all the bits and pieces that we've put together for the business support network to help people in this downturn. We're not the only people doing that. You know, lots of skills trainers are offering their time for free. Lots of skills trainers are heavily discounting their packages of different systems and different products. So there's loads of different resources to kind of jump on from soft skills to computer skills. There's bits and pieces that you can be doing with your CV. There's bits and pieces that you could be doing with different technology. You could be recording video introductions so you're ready to go. So now is the time to be really as proactive as possible, to put yourself at the front of the queue when the time is to go. So hopefully that helps a little bit. So we've had another question here. Which industries have you found still to be active in recruiting for HR or other business support professionals? And have they been open to consider candidates outside of their industry? Hannah, have you seen, do you want to do the first bit perhaps, and I'll do the second bit? What have you seen many industries? What sectors have you seen that have been recruiting?
So I mean, we've had a HR role within legal, which was on a contract basis. There has been business support roles, mainly from what I've seen on the job boards, within the public sector. I've seen a lot of PA roles advertised for care homes, or government bodies. HR roles I've not seen heaps of, but I think that when things do start moving again, that there is going to be a big influx in HR roles. There's going to be a lot of change in businesses, I think, in terms of how they're recruiting, and potentially even more redundancies and stuff. So they're going to need HR people, whether it's on an interim or a permanent basis, to come in and help out with that.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, HR would be deemed to be a business critical area. From the research that I've been doing, pharmaceutical is one that still remain pretty active. I follow a lot of different people and keep my eye on a lot of different industries, and I seem to, I see the kind of food supply chain, the likes of the big supermarkets and the big stores and shops. They seem to be very busy in terms of their back offices, their head offices, and what have you. The next part of the question about businesses being open to other sectors, that's a real tricky one to answer. Carte blanche straight away. There are some industries that we look after, for example, like legal, which can be at times a little bit frustrating, because the legal industry says we only want, in their HR teams, for example, we only want somebody from this environment or another law firm environment, another law firm environment. So they are quite closed in terms of the experience. But on the flip side to it, there are other industries which actively welcome experience from other sectors as well. So I think the best advice that we can possibly give, unless Hannah completely disagrees, which, if she does, that's great, is to just kind of apply to as many different places as you possibly can, and cast the net as wide as possible. One of the tips that we always say is about owning your experience and making the most of your experience. And if you can justify the experience that you have based on the job specification that you have, then make the most of it. And when you're applying for that job, make sure you tell that organization, this is the reason why I'm applying. I might not have this sector experience, but this is my experience, and this is the reason why you should consider my application, because my experience does this, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to just getting yourself out there as much as possible. I always say to people, when applying to roles, apply to relevant roles, but that's not in terms of industry, because I do strongly believe that if you're a PA or an EA, that you do have transferable skills to work in the majority of different kind of companies and industries. Not all internal recruiters see it like that, unfortunately, and like Paul said, we'll get a roll through and they'll say you have to have 5 years experience in legal, you have to have 5 years experience in banking. But we do also get other roles where they are a lot more open on it, so it's just about getting yourself out there. Obviously, don't be, if you're a legal PA, don't be applying to the job to be a finance director because that is completely irrelevant. But a legal PA could also still do a senior administrator role and so on. And a lot of jobs out there, don't be scared off by the titles, I'd say, and just look in the actual job description and see what the role really is about, because a PA role in one company can be called a senior administrator in another company, or an executive assistant in another company. So it's just about reading the actual duties and have you got the correct skills for that, all the transferable skills for that. And again, like Paul said, if it's not very clear straight away while you are applying for that role, have a covering letter or just put a few sentences in your profile to explain why you believe you are the best candidate for that position.
Good stuff. So we've got time for one last question, because I'm keen for people to kind of throw some questions up who from all of you who are here now. So if you've got something, just kind of pop it in the chat box while we're answering this last question. And the last one that's come through is from an individual who stopped working in August, and since then returning to London, it seems to be kind of one thing after another, with Brexit uncertainty, then Christmas, and then now this, which seems to be an unfortunate chain of events for everybody. But it seems to me that this individual, although I don't know the exact backstory, seems like quite a very senior individual, and has been applying for different jobs, and the companies that she's applying to go back to her and say, "Oh, I think you'll get a bit too bored, too overqualified, etc., etc." But she's in a position where she doesn't want the kind of 24/7 type role that she's had in the past, but looking for more longevity that will provide a bit more of a work-life balance. And she's asking how she can express this, basically. Now, I've got a great idea behind it, my thoughts, but it'd be good to hear what Hannah's thoughts are as well, basically.
I really like this question. I meet a lot of candidates who are in this position that don't necessarily want, a PA job where you're going to be working 24/7 and you have to be on call and you need to be in the office at 7 a.m. and so on. They want something that's just a standard 9 to 5. There isn't going to be loads of overtime. They're perhaps, towards the mid to end bit of their career, and for them, progression isn't the key thing that they're looking for at this point in their life. They want a nice stable role, somewhere where they're going to be able to stay with the business long term. And a lot of the time they're almost scared to say it. I don't think you should be scared to say it at all. It's about how you say it. You don't want it to come across as a negative. I think a lot of the times you'll see jobs advertised and they say, we're looking for a really proactive, enthusiastic person and so on. You still want to express that you have those qualities, but you just want to be very honest with them and, just express to them the stage that you are at in your life, and that you just want a nice role. But it is about, how you say it, because you just don't want it to come across negatively. So I think Paul's got a good idea behind how you say that, so I'll let him go into that.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Hannah, and I like this question as well, because it is something that we see a lot of, and we've seen lots of it over the years, where people, they still want to work, and don't want to be in a position where you're getting phone calls at whatever time of night, and that that's totally fine. Look, first things first, one of the big revolutions, should we say, over the last 3-4 years is companies trying to provide as much work-life balance as humanly possible. And you think of some of the accountants, the accountancies and the big professional service firms, not necessarily legal, but the kind of big four accountancies and the management consultants below them, they're massive on work-life balance, and it kind of trickles down in the big four. If one organization does something, the next one does it, but then they try to do it better. Then the next one does it, they try to do it better, and so on and so on and so on. So it's almost like a competition to see who can have the best work-life balance at the moment in certain different organizations, and management consultants are leading the way on that. But actually expressing it, one of the things that we started to do 3-4 years ago is that we started putting video introductions at the front, at the top of candidate CVs, which gave the candidate an opportunity to show their soft skills and give them a platform to so the organisations could find out what they're all about without just reading a 2-3 page document, and put in something like that, something I'm looking for something with a little bit more of a work-life balance and what have you. It can be a risky strategy on bullet point format at the start of a CV. Whereas if you were to record a video which basically said, I've got all of this experience, this is what I can bring to the table. I'm looking for a role where I can work really closely with, with the individuals and what have you, and not necessarily, just come out and say it, but magnify you the experience that you have, and tell them that you enjoyed those types of roles, but we're now looking for something that I can really get my teeth into, where I can make sure everything's done and be on top of everything, and do it in video format, will be really well received, basically. Yeah. But if that individual wants to kind of reach out to me and Hannah to discuss further, we'd definitely love to chat more, basically. So look, we've kind of rattled through quite a few of the questions. Has anybody got any other questions that they would like to ask whilst we're here? Be great to hear from anyone. So this is always the awkward bit, I find, is when we start questions and then go on, anyone. How about you, Julie Macklin Carr? Put you in the spotlight there. Don't worry, it's fine. Okay, well, look. Oh, here we go. Due to lack of demand, do you think a lot more positions? Okay, so due to lack of demand for admin positions, do you think there will be a lot more part-time positions available, with roles being 4 days a week? Do you know what? I'm not necessarily sure there are going to be a lack of demand for admin positions. I really don't. I think, for the last 20 years of working in recruitment, every year we hear, oh, there's not going to be any admin jobs. It's all going to be done this. It's all going to be done that. But it doesn't happen. There's always admin. It's as simple as that. There is always processes which people have to go through. I think after this, there's still going to be the volume of admin, if not more. If companies go into administration, there's going to be more admin. If there's mergers for companies, there's going to be stacks of admin. I don't necessarily think there will be a lack. I think that there will be more of a shift to perhaps shorter term contracts and more temporary contracts in the short term. But I don't think that there will be perhaps a lack of admin roles. What do you think, Hannah?
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. I say to people all the time, and I feel so strongly about this, that PAs, administrators, support staff really are the glue to a business. Fee earners and so on, the people that are making the money for businesses, they can't do what they should be doing without their support. It's been seen in big organisations that have let large numbers of support staff go, and months later have had to bring them back in because they just can't be successful without their support staff. So I don't think there will be a drop in roles, but like you said, what I do think there will be is a lot more temporary roles, a lot more fixed term contract roles. It could be that there's more part-time roles. If companies can't afford or budget to pay people full-time salaries, they may end up getting people in on 3 or 4 days a week. So time will tell.
Yeah, and look, I totally agree. And Strictly Recruitment, we're not a huge organisation, but I can tell you now categorically, and Hannah's probably going to laugh when I say this, I can't function without Holly next to me, and with all of the stuff that she does, I literally just can't do half the stuff that I do, and I'm sadly we've had to put her on furlough at the moment. And I'm now like pulling my hair out because I've got all of this stuff. So, I can tell you from, just from a personal perspective and knowing lots of people who have got admin staff around them, they are invaluable. And I genuinely believe there isn't that going to be a lack of admin jobs in the future, especially even if things start to crash. You know, that will essentially increase the levels of admin that little bit more from what we've seen in the past. Fingers crossed. Let's hope so. So we've got last question here, a bit late to the conversation. Do we think remote PA jobs will be a thing of the future? I've worked remotely for the past 5 years and think it works well. What do you think, Hannah?
I do think, kind of going back to what we said earlier about working from home, more and more companies are doing it. I think given the situation that's gone at the moment, I think there will be more flexibility around it, because I think this has been a brilliant way for a lot of people to prove to companies that it does work, having the odd day working from home. I don't think it will completely turn into remote PAs. I think a lot of companies do still need people in the office, especially, you know, if it's a client-facing PA role, they need you there. A lot of PAs, you know, go down to meetings and so on with their executives or whoever it is they're supporting, so they'll need to be in the office for that. But I do think we will see an increase in the flexibility of working from home.
Yeah, I agree. I think there will be an increase of people working from home. It's something that we've seen. We've seen lots and lots of people ask, haven't we, Hannah, over the last 2 or 3 years, is there an opportunity for me to work from home? I think to go to a full virtual model, I'm not necessarily sure that huge percentages of companies are going to do that, but I do think it's going to open the door for more people working from home, definitely. But time will tell, because, you know, if we all think back, the first couple of weeks of when this took place, nobody was doing any work, you know, so that it could actually go the opposite way. Look, we don't know. I think in the months to come, that's when we'll find out. If businesses find that there are holes in the system or flaws in the system, then they're not going to touch it. And if you think about how, you know, law firms look at people working remotely, they are quite anti it and have been. This will be a defining moment for that industry, particularly because it might shift that, or it might reaffirm what they have to say. But I do think that there will be an increase of more kind of home working, but not a complete shift. Because what you do see is a lot of people saying, well, actually, they like the interaction of their work colleagues and, you know, seeing their mates at work and the actual process of going to work. So we shall see. Should we do one last question, Hannah?
Yeah, I can see that there was one that hang on. There's one here from Crean. I've had a lot of long-term contract roles. How do I convince employers I'm ready for a permanent role? This came up quite a bit in last week's webinar that we did. And it's very much about owning your experience and giving good reasons behind, you know, why you have been contracting, whether it's a lifestyle choice, whether there's something that you do on the side. So contracting works best for you. A lot of people fall into contracting, and it is completely okay to explain that. I think when people try and get around it and not tell the truth about what they've been doing, that's when problems come up in interviews. Of course, you know, you then start your background screening and everything is going to flag up. But it's about owning it and just, you know, proving to people that actually you've had these contract roles which shouldn't be looked at negatively, because you've got experience of working in so many different companies. You're familiar with going in and hitting the ground running. You've supported so many different, you know, personalities and characters at all different levels. So it's made you a very, very dynamic person that essentially has allowed you to be able to come into a business and, like I said, hit the ground running. So that will definitely be a positive for most firms.
Oh yeah, totally agree. That's something that we've heard from our clients in particular, saying own your experience and be proud of it, basically. So look, hey, look, I think I've really enjoyed it today, and I think that we've managed to get quite a few questions in that half hour slot. So this is becoming quite popular. So so thank you for everyone that's joining us. I want to be cautious that I don't want to turn any of these things into a sales pitch of what we're trying to do. but I just want to flag one thing. Well, we've got lots of great things coming up this week, but there is something that I'm going to be doing on Thursday, which is essentially, it's called Insider Recruitment Tips for PAs. And it's a speech that I've been doing. I've been using publicly, and I've done a lot of public speaking with it, and it's always been very well received in a lot of the PA networks. And it's essentially kind of breaking down the parts of the process and giving you some really kind of honest, straight talking advice from a recruiter's perspective that perhaps might help you guys when looking for a job. So that's coming up on Thursday. So that might be of interest to some of you guys as well, which is which is based on this, but perhaps going in a little bit more detail to kind of every single part of the process. But look, thanks to everybody that's jumped on, and especially Hannah as well for your opinions, Hannah. We really appreciate that.
That's all right.
Cool. So look, if anyone's got anything that they want to get in touch with, please drop us a line. And thanks for all your support. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Bye.